Okay, well, we might get started, and those who are still to join us can hop in when they're ready. So hello and welcome everybody. It's great to see all of you back for another webinar in our Audience Outlook Monitor series. My name is Lena Stein and I'm a Research Associate here at the Australia Council for the Arts. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from the unceded lands of the Bidjigal people, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And I'd also like to acknowledge the many nations throughout Australia that we're tuning in from, and to all First Nations people online and present here in this session. So we're nearing 2 years of the Audience Outlook Monitor research in Australia, and with that comes rich tracking data that our partners Patternmakers and Wolf Brown have been delivering since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic on the behaviours and feelings of arts audiences, which I know has been invaluable for many of you in the sector. So while the situation is undoubtedly different across the jurisdictions, it does feel like there's some light ahead with strong vaccination rates and plans to exit lockdown for New South Wales and Victoria. And while we might be looking at some in-person events very soon, as audiences ourselves, we're all different and we have different needs and risk tolerances. So there's absolutely still the need for and market for engaging audiences at home through digital or virtual offerings. So for today's webinar, we're going to be discussing how we can effectively reach and creatively engage audiences at home, including the latest data on audience readiness to attend, digital participation trends and tips, and some key audience segments for digital work, which is also timely to discuss, especially as we move into this new phase of the pandemic for Australia. It's great to see so many familiar names amongst the attendees. And as always, regardless of whether this is your first Outlook Monitor webinar or not, please do drop into the chat, introduce yourselves and tell us where you are today. Share any thoughts or comments, or even tips and strategies that have worked for you or your organisation. It can be so helpful for your peers to share, and we can learn from each other as well. So along with Patternmakers Managing Director, Tandi Palmer Williams, I'd also like to welcome Dunn, who is the Executive Director of the Sydney Dance Company, who will be discussing some great strategies for how you can reach and keep audiences engaged at home. Before I hand over to Tandi and Anne, if you'd like to ask a question at any stage of the discussion, please just type it into the Q&A box down the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll get to as many as we can. And of course, use the chat as much as you'd like. I'd also like to thank and welcome David and Elisa, who will be Auslan interpreting for us today. Thank you very much. So now over to you, Tandi.
Thanks, Lena. And hello, everyone. It's great to be with you today. We were just saying we've had a public holiday in New South Wales, and so that means doing 5 days of work in 4. So I'm sure for those of you who've also done that, you're having a busy week, and there's so much going on at the moment that, we've all got our plates very, very full. So I really appreciate you making time to come and look at the data with us today. I'm beaming to you from Bundjalung country and really excited to be talking about reaching audiences at home today, which is a really important topic. And here at Patternmakers, we're also in the thick of analysing some new data that we have hot off the press on Friday. So we'll have some really fresh facts for you in the next couple of weeks to share, and I'll hint at some of those findings today. But I'm really excited also to be here with Anne Dunn, who at Sydney Dance Company has some really awesome experiences and kind of strategic thinking, and I'm really excited to dig more into that today. We had a great kind of pre-meeting last week where we looked at some of what they've been doing at Sydney Dance Company and some stats. So good morning, Anne, how are you going?
Good morning, thanks Tandi. I'm great to be here and really happy to be coming to you this morning from Gadigal country.
Awesome. So yes, as Lena said, please do say hello in the chat. I feel very lonely out here if I don't hear from anyone in the chat. So I really want to know who's attending today, where are you beaming in from, and tell us a little bit about what you're doing digitally at the moment, or what you're doing in terms of reaching audiences at home. Are you in lockdown? Are you in the land of the free? tell us, please, so we can have a good conversation today. I am about to share some stats that are from the July round of the Audience Outlook Monitor, so a couple of months ago now. But what we do is really dig into the different jurisdictions and their responses. At that time in July, there were already some jurisdictions in lockdown, and so we can see based on how they responded then and what we've seen over the past 18 months in terms of what happens when people go in and out of lockdown and how people's preferences for what they engage with at home is kind of evolving and maturing throughout the pandemic. But if you have any questions about where we get the data from, you can follow a link through to our website. Bianca, my colleague, is with me today. She's the project manager for the study in Australia, so you can always contact her or shoot through to the website to have a look at all the information we have about the methodology. But basically the data is collected by 130 different organisations across Australia to their database of past attendees. And then we aggregate all of that into a freely available dashboard, which is there for you to access anytime. And we dig into it and zoom in on different trends, and having that kind of collaborative cross-sector approach means we can see things that are not just going on in one organisation, but right across the sector, and see how things are changing when we look at different art forms, different audience demographics, different jurisdictions. So lots to share in there. In terms of what we'll look at today, I'm actually going to start with looking at a bit of a snapshot of what Australian audiences were doing in July. And this is a way that we haven't really looked at the data this way before, but it compares kind of what people are doing online and offline. And bear in mind, these are national averages. So there are, of course, different things going on in different states. But when you look across the country, this is what we see in our database of past attendees. So 26% saw a performance, 23% visited a museum. Almost everyone's doing things like reading for pleasure and listening to music at home. But also people are getting back to restaurants. That's a really common thing to be doing out of lockdown. Making arts and craft, making music. We know that audiences are sometimes using their time in lockdown to get more creative. And so we see that although things haven't kind of gone to that early days of the pandemic, we saw a bit of a boom in kind of people, making sourdough and doing all that stuff and digitally as well. But we haven't seen a return to that. However, people are still doing it more often than they did before the pandemic. So I think it's still a really interesting time for that. And then you'll see some of the digital activities. So 17% tuned into a live streamed event, 24% accessed something on demand. 19% are engaging with online arts courses and workshops. The proportion of those online who are paying is 33%. So you just need to bear in mind that that's the proportion of people who are online. And the proportion of people who are online who are tuning in as social viewing is 27%. So there's some interesting stats that we're going to dig a little bit more in today. But firstly, I'll just say hello to everyone who said hello in the chat. Hi, Heath, how are you? Rebecca, good to see you. Heidi, how are you? Awesome to have you with us this morning. If you have any questions that you're hoping we'll tackle today, please let us know. And yes, hi, Heidi, I'm sure you are eagerly waiting to reopen. Hopefully that's soon. All right, so to look a little bit more at the digital participation rates, we know, as I said, that they're a bit more consistent now after they peaked in the early days of the pandemic, but they've been pretty much consistent or slightly declining throughout most of this year in most forms of activity. And pretty much we think this data now provides a pretty stable basis for planning. So you can have a closer look at those stats. We know that there are some trends within each of these in terms of different ages and stuff like that. For instance, younger audiences are much more likely to be doing online courses and creating content, whereas older audiences are more likely to be doing things like virtual exhibitions and museum tours. And pretty much everyone is doing video, live streamed, on-demand video, and all things like that. So in terms of what we're likely to see after lockdown, what we did is ask people, when you're not in lockdown, what role does digital experiences play on your life? And we've got 3 groups, and we're going to talk a bit more about these groups because they actually provide some really interesting kind of segments that we can think about in terms of digital participation. So 10% we call digital devotees, and they are the people who say that digital plays a substantial role in their lives, even when they're not in lockdown. 14% 42% in the middle are what we call selective but supportive. So they see a small role for digital in their lives. They'll kind of tap into digital experiences kind of when it suits them. Outside of lockdown, they often prefer to go to things in person, but they'll also do digital where it's a more convenient or accessible option for them, depending on their specific circumstances. And then we have the tide of technology. So these are people that see no role for digital outside of lockdown. When they are in lockdown, they'll sometimes engage if it's the only thing they can do. But generally, they are basically they're over it. They've tried digital experiences and it doesn't work for them. And so they prefer to, wherever possible, go to things in person. But we do see them engaging online, particularly where there's stay-at-home orders or some kind of restrictions, and they may choose to do things online if they can't access it face-to-face. So we'll talk a little bit more about these segments, but first I just wanted to, I guess, provide a bit of an outlook in terms of what we're going to see in the coming months, because although the digital participant rates have been kind of declining slightly, we still think digital is a really important format to be working with. And long term, it's definitely something that just simply can't be ignored. I think we need to be thinking about this as a long-term proposition. And although things may change in and out of lockdown, as we've said, that there's that 1 in 10 who digital is going to play a substantial role. And the good thing about that group is that they are willing to pay. So many of them are paying. But what I just wanted to say is that in terms of the next few months, what I'm just putting up on screen is how risk averse people are about attending things in person. So in the top, you can see May 2020, where in the red on the right, you can see they're the people who are ready to attend now or whenever permitted. They're kind of ready to go. In the pink, we've got the proportion that are more risk averse. They'll only go when the risk is minimal. And then in the blue, we've got people who won't tolerate any risk at all. So as you can see over time, as we go down the slide, that red really built up over summer when, 2/3 or more were ready to attend whenever permitted. In July, we saw that drop back as the Delta variant outbreak started to take hold in some states. And I'm showing you the New South Wales Metro results at the bottom, where I think this is an indication of what audiences in lockdown are likely to be feeling right now. And we know that in our latest data, it sort of looks quite similar to that across the country, actually. So interestingly, in those states that aren't in lockdown, more people are ready to go as soon as permitted, and in lockdown, it's slightly less. But I think it's kind of what we can expect in the outbreak-affected states of New South Wales, ACT and Victoria. After lockdown, I think we'll have 50%-ish ready to go, 45% adopting a more risk-averse mindset. So what I take away from all of this is, yes, we may be emerging from lockdown soon, but it's still a pandemic out there, unfortunately. And people are feeling a little bit uncertain about what that means for their attendance. So even though we're now seeing vaccination rates through the roof among arts audiences, many vaccinated people feel hesitant about being a vector for the virus potentially, or someone in their household being vulnerable to a breakthrough infection, or they've got children with them and they aren't vaccinated, or they're worried about someone who might be vulnerable in their immediate circle. So we're still seeing some hesitancy even among vaccinated audiences. And until we kind of work through these opening up issues in the next few months, it's likely that we'll still see some lockdown style behaviour online. So I think digital remains a proposition for the next 6 to 12 months and long term. And so I think it's wise that we continue to think about digital backup plans for physical events and be thinking about our digital strategies and how we're investing in building our capabilities for this long term. And what's your takeaway? Any thoughts about how you're kind of planning for the next few months or long term? I think you said to me last week that you're very much thinking about digital as part of your long term strategy. Are you able to kind of elaborate on that just a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, the experience of first lockdown really, pushed our kind of longer term digital thinking into the foreground, and we shortened really quickly what we were intending to do and moved into that digital space really quickly. But Sydney Dance Company had always had ambition to move into digital with particularly class delivery. That came together very quickly for us last year. But what it really showed us is that there is an opportunity to broach some of the access issues that participants might find and actually find a new audience. So really, it's become part of our kind of mainstream thinking across all of the business segments. So we have the kind of performance segment, the open class segment, but also an education and training segment. And looking into the future, we really see that digital will have a role to play in each of those business segments going forward.
Interesting. I love the way you're thinking about that it's part of the model for all of the things that you're doing in some way, shape or form. So we'll dig a bit more into exactly what you're doing a little later, but yeah, I think it'll be really exciting to follow what you're doing. We'll be following closely. So what I wanted to now talk about is just around basically how people think about digital events and the uncertain environment. So what we're seeing in the data is that although we've had lockdowns affecting many people's plans, and even in states that haven't had major outbreaks, people have still been affected by cancellations. And so we are seeing some people adopt behaviour that's a little bit different to what they would normally be doing. So they're managing risk by doing things like opting for local events. So they're being a bit more cautious about booking that, that big show in the city, or obviously delaying travel plans and stuff like that, and opting for events that have what they perceive to have a lower level of risk, and that includes digital offers. So in the second quote I've shown here on screen, this person said, "In-person will always win. However, if restrictions prevent mingling, I'd prefer the option of live streaming, especially as it helps to overcome challenges of access, geography and juggling family needs." So I think digital it's something that everyone has now had their eyes open to, and we've seen a bit of that breakdown in terms of how people are thinking about the role it'll play long term. And what we know about digital devotees in the selective but supportive segment are that often they're people who have, as this person's alluded to, a form of access need, whether that's related to geography or experiencing a disability, or they've got caring responsibilities or family at home, or they live somewhere that it isn't easy to get home to late at night from something. So I think it's kind of interesting to be thinking about digital not only as important for reaching people in lockdown, but kind of part of making ourselves accessible to everyone. And I know, and you said to me, if we are going to achieve our mission of reaching the broadest possible audience, then this just simply has to be part of what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the feedback we've had from our class participants has been extraordinary. People that have physical access issues or remoteness, regionality, or they're immunocompromised for whatever reason. So that's been a really important piece coming through, and actually will help to really give strength to our accessibility plans as well as our kind of digital plans. So it's a beautifully integrated delivery of expansion of what we do.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we'll get into some of the data now around payment models. So basically what we've found is that the proportion of people online who are paying is slightly lower than it was in March. So at the top, you can see we asked, have you paid for any online arts and cultural experiences in the past fortnight? And 2/3 of people said no. But going down the page, you can see the proportion that are paying for different formats. So people are doing things like purchasing a single experience, that's like a pay-per-view. They're doing things like making a donation for something they've seen, subscribing to platforms, or subscribing to programs that include digital experiences. So that's kind of what we're working with in terms of the market. And you'll see the declines of it's very subtle, like there's only some small movement. So I think it's a good sign that that market is holding shape as it is. Interestingly, what we're seeing is that the proportion of people who are of those paying, the proportion who are spending over $50 has actually grown slightly. So interestingly, it seems like although we're seeing like a slight shrinkage in the size of that market, it's kind of like in a way, a deeper market, because those paying are willing to spend slightly higher amounts than they were. And that's been a kind of consistent trend over time. However, it's important to know kind of audiences in general, as very much as we're still figuring out exactly how to make digital work best for us, audiences are still calibrating their perception of value online. However, there appears to be a kind of favorable price point around $10 to $20, although, you know, how long's a piece of string for all different types of experiences, there is a market. So I'm just going to show you some of the quotes about this. So one said, I'd consider something similar in Australia if the price was reasonable. A recent offer of $60 for a single view was too much. Another person said, I'd be prepared to pay $10 to be able to view an on-demand online performance, probably not more than this amount. And I'd be happy to pay a small, not the same amount as attending in-person fee for those digital experiences. So generally, people are thinking of it as not quite as good as a live physical experience, but certainly something that they are willing to pay for. And as this time goes on and we, you know, our products mature and we've got a better hold on kind of what is seen as valuable for our audiences, audiences too are starting to figure out what works for them and what they're actually willing to pay for over and over. So I'm going to show these a couple of segments again. So we've got the digital devotees, supportive but selective, and then tired of tech. And as you can see in the first row, we've got their online participation rate. Obviously, among digital devotees, the recent participation rate is as high as 77%, whereas in tired of tech, it's only 27%. And similarly, in terms of live streams, you'll see the participation rate is quite different. In terms of digital devotees, they're really interested in quality. They're most likely to be paying. They're the most risk averse about events. So as physical events resume, they may be slower to come back than other segments and prefer to continue engaging online if there are outbreaks in their community. In terms of demographic features, it's kind of interesting to think, I thought, when we were doing this, that digital devotees would be more likely to be older, but not true. They all ages appeal in all segments. In fact, digital devotees have some interesting demographics. They're more likely to hold a postgraduate degree, more likely to speak a language other than English, more likely to have a disability, more likely to be in a caring role. They're also more likely to earn a proportion of their income from creating art themselves. And they are frequent attenders, and they're more likely to be donors. So when I think it's important to kind of try and think about how are we going to identify these people long term who are really keen and willing to pay for experiences, and distinguish them from our tired of tech in our audiences who don't really want to hear about our digital offers over and over. So I think it's good to think about, you know, how can we be tagging these people in our database or creating segments that we can market to in different ways. And I think the opportunity for targeted you know, marketing approaches and very clearly thinking about who our offerings are for, and also managing expectations about how the volume of participation that we're likely to see, particularly in a kind of post-lockdown environment. I think that's wise. So in terms of our supportive but selective, they're also very arts engaged, but what we know about this segment is they're more likely to be very busy. So they're more likely to be employed full-time and more likely to be parents, interestingly. Our tired of tech are, you know, slightly different. They're slightly more likely to live in a regional area, more likely to be Australian born. They're the least likely to be donors, and they attend kind of slightly less often than some of the other segments. So here's some quotes. The digital devotee says, I believe that the pandemic has illustrated the potential for live performance to be shared with those whose location or life pattern prevents attendance. Our supportive but selective say things like, I love the streaming option and wish it was a default for most events, but in addition to live attendance. And then tired of tech say things like, I cannot watch any more digital theatre. I'm all tapped out and have disengaged sadly from the platform. So interestingly, when we look at the age trends, I mentioned before that people of all ages appear in all segments. However, among paying audiences, those audiences who are paying who are over 65 are more likely to spend over $50. This group are also slightly more likely to make donations for what they see. I thought I'd just mention that. When asked what's worth paying for online, audiences often mention affordability and flexibility. And I know, Anne, you've got some interesting insights about the angles that you've been thinking about and the campaign angles you're working with for your digital products, which I'll love to ask you about in a moment. So here, a couple of our respondents said things like, I've recently moved to regional Victoria and I used to be an MSO subscriber and regularly attended performances at Melbourne Recital Centre. It's not as easy to do this now, particularly weekdays, so digital is a good alternative. And another person said, being able to continue to attend events such as Last Frontiers Festival and Lara Festival is really valuable as they're too far and expensive to attend in person ever. So, and I know you had some interesting kind of experiences recently running 3 different campaigns. I thought it might be interesting to share that story now.
Yeah, so we recently launched our on-demand platform for our classes. So during lockdown last year, we'd been doing virtual studio, which was a live Zoom classes, and we moved to an on-demand platform. And so when you look at the marketing of that, we really focused marketing around kind of different value propositions. One was around the kind of privacy proposition, one was around a convenience and access proposition, and one was around the kind of fitness and mental health proposition. And what we saw was some splits around aging and age differentials. So for the younger demographics, the 18 to 35s, it was around ease and accessibility. For the older demographic, when we utilized imagery that was really focusing on privacy, you get to do this from home, you don't have to have a camera on, it's not a kind of thing where you have to be in the studio live or even be on camera. That really resonated with the slightly older demographic, that 35 to 55 market. And so we were able to kind of start to really skew our marketing spend into focusing on those demographics. And for us, that 35 to 55 demographic for the classes really represented a kind of sweet spot of the main demographic audience we were chasing for this new product category.
Interesting. Yeah, I love how you've developed those campaigns, and even doing things like, you can target those people on social media and then boost the posts that work with different segments.
So we actually had 3 different sets of campaign imagery there that each focused on those messaging and really boosted those ones getting most traction in the different demographics.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so I just thought I'd share a little bit, because we talked about things being live and on demand, but I wanted to just mention that both live and on demand experiences are appealing. So when we ask people about a list of features and ask them which ones are most appealing to you, 64% said the ability to access the experience on demand to enjoy anytime. So that does appear to be very appealing for audiences. 38% said they want to hear about the artist or artistic leader talk about the work, and 37% seeing something live that is happening right now. So although it appears that on demand is more popular, there is definitely a market for live, and some people say that live streams can be really more exciting and have a better sense of kind of more compelling kind of urgency that you might miss out if you don't catch it now. And often it's where people are coming together in a particular moment to share something together, so that creates a sense of kind of connection and immediacy for people. So I think it's interesting to experiment with both. Only thing to mention about live streams is people tell us sometimes that they are easy to miss, and some say they prefer to watch them on demand. So ideally, if you can have both, that's the golden gun. So people say things like, sometimes I buy tickets to things or register and then forget when they are and miss them. So it's easy to get caught up in life at home and not make the time to stop and watch. And one person said, because we were able to watch it on demand during a 3-day window, we were able to pause and discuss what we were experiencing. This made for more heightened engagement with the performances. I will just share a story, because on the weekend I actually made plans with my mum to do a live museum tour for an institution that was doing a live tour, and it came around to Sunday afternoon when it was meant to be starting at 4 p.m. and I was in the thick of getting home from the beach with the family, and I was like, I really probably will just would opt out, but because I'd made the commitment to my mum that we would do this together, I made it happen. So I sat down at the computer and did it, and it was a really nice moment. But I did reflect, if I hadn't made the commitment to actually do it with my mum, I probably would have just given it a miss, kind of thing. And one of the ideas that I think is really interesting, and I'll share a little bit more about this in a couple of slides time, is the idea of social viewing. And using a digital experience to play a role in connection. And I think for those of us in lockdown, that's something that we're really all trying to achieve with our friends and family, is staying in touch and staying connected and feeling, being able to support each other. And digital arts experiences can play a role, I think, in those connections. And I'll share a little bit more about that in time. I wonder if you've got any experiences like that. I'd love you to share in the chat how you're thinking about, if you're doing live streams, how you make sure people don't miss them, or if you're doing mostly on demand. And what are your thoughts on demand versus live, and how have you kind of rationalized that at SDC?
Yeah, so we recognise that there's desire for both, and that's shown us through the kind of feedback we've had from people as we moved out of that live space with Virtual Studio. And, at the end of kind of 2020, as numbers are starting, and we started to plan on demand, but actually we were getting a lot of feedback that people wanted that live. So going forward, we're actually about to launch a new category, I guess, once we open the studio. So we're in lockdown and we're looking forward to reopening on the 18th. But when we do reopen, we'll also be doing a hybrid class, so an actual live stream of a class that's taking place in the studio, so that people can participate either in studio or at home. And that'll be in addition to the kind of on-demand offering. So you can either do a kind of subscription to an on-demand or a digital experience that way. You can do a transaction for a single class via hybrid. So it's that live experience of the people in the studio and you participating, in the studio teacher going, hey, it's great to see you all in the studio, and those are dancing along at home sort of thing. So I'm really looking at having both of those. And then I think in the performance space, we're working towards creating a digital audience for performance where there is a live event where you get that feeling of an event, but that it's then available on demand for a catch-up period afterwards. So really trying to recognizing that there are those two drivers there about people wanting that live shared experience, but for lots of people that's really not that convenient, so wanting to be able to pick up on the convenience. So the way we're structuring it is really catering to both of those needs going forward.
Interesting. All right. If you're listening, I'd love to hear how you're thinking about this. What is your strategy on this, and how are you kind of thinking about the viability of whatever you're doing for the long term? All right. So in terms of the barriers, I wanted to just mention this, and this data is a little bit older. So we've got May 2020 and March 2021. And what I just wanted to show is that even whether it's in lockdown or outside of lockdown, the top barrier to engaging online that the largest proportion relate to is I generally don't know what is on offer. And I think that discoverability is one of the biggest challenges we have around our online content. And I think digital marketing has become even more important. We know that people are connecting with arts organisations through social media more often than they did before the pandemic, and staying in touch with them on different platforms. But discoverability is certainly a challenge. Other challenges I'll mention, some people just simply having other priorities. That's likely to be our kind of tired of tech segment, or not being interested. And then some people have barriers like I need help figuring out how to access the programs, or I don't have the right technology, those kind of things. So we can help audiences work out how to get the most from digital experiences. So some quotes here up on screen is, at 85 years old, I am not so comfortable using the technology. So it's interesting to think about that older segment, being one of the most likely to spend larger amounts, and how we can make things easy for them. Another person said, I had a technology problem at home. It might have been user error, not worth the effort now. We can go out again. And so another person said, sometimes the program is easy to access, but I have had problems in accessing one event. It was almost over by the time I worked out how to gain access. So I could certainly relate to this. As I was messaging my mum as the tour started yesterday, the first thing she said to me was, where is the link? And I was like, well, you just go to the Facebook and you click here. And of course she was like totally confused. And if I hadn't been there doing it with her, she would have given up and opted out. So I think that technology support is really helpful if you can provide it. And you mentioned to me you have done some interesting thinking about the kind of roles of and who's doing tech support and how you're thinking about that for kind of hybrid events. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we, again, thinking about that customer access part. So we actually have a customer service assistant ready, and so they're on the end of a phone if they need to, or people can email and chat in to get support from the customer perspective, but also for the classes from the teacher perspective. So we have what we call a virtual studio technician, a VST, assigned to classes, so that, for instance, if there's an internet drop or a sound drop or something for the teacher, that they can step in and go, hey, everyone, don't worry, the teacher will be back. We're just doing a reset, and really help to kind of moderate that experience for between the customer and the teacher, because I think the feedback we have also is around that, accessibility and finding help to get that, and having someone there that's kind of across it and monitoring it and being a support ear person is really helpful.
I think so. I think that's, oh, whoops. Oh no, I'm not muted. Sorry, I thought I was having a mute problem then. I think that's so important. If you have got the resources to provide that tech person, it can help, because we know that sometimes if people have a technology problem, it means they're more hesitant to try again next time. Sometimes they'll think, oh, I had a problem last time, I'm not sure I know how to do it, and they'll almost give up. So the flip side is also true. So when someone has an experience that does work and they do enjoy, that can open up a whole avenue of things. So we kind of need to think of that, investing in the tech person, it's kind of an investment in that lifetime customer value, so that if we can help them get to know how we're doing it and what's it like on Facebook versus this platform, and help them get to know it, then we've got a customer who's knows how to engage that way long term. So although it's might be a cost up front, I think in time it will pay off. And as I said, yes, moving between platforms. So that's a common technology problem that people have is, if they get the link by email, where they go and so that if you've got a tech person, I'm sure that they're proficient by now in helping people do that, especially with Facebook Lives and stuff seem to really flummox people. Now, in terms of motivation, so we've covered barriers, but interestingly, in motivations, we're also seeing some different patterns in and out of lockdown. So in the green, we've got May last year, the lockdown period, and March 2021, the blue is where there was kind of relatively few restrictions and things were pretty open. And so what we saw in lockdown is that supporting an artist or organisation that is important rises to become a bigger motivator for going online, as does people going online for their own mental well-being. So we know that in lockdown periods, digital experiences can put a greater emphasis on well-being, connection, and showing support. Outside of lockdown, people are more inclined to go online for doing things that they wouldn't normally be able to do. So accessing something that might not be on in their town or their city, or seeing something they'd wanted to see live, but for whatever reason, they weren't able to get there. So it's kind of that kind of FOMO idea, I guess. I talked a little bit about social viewing before, and I thought I'd mention it here now, because it's one of the trends we're eagerly watching. And basically, I've just got an image up on screen, which is from the Office of Educational Technology in the US. And it showed that in an education context where kids engage in digital technology, the experience for them is much more engaging when they use it together with an adult. So you can see here some of the different ways that children and adults can interact with technology. And the same is true for, adult audiences outside of an education context. And that is social viewing can help audiences get more out of the experience, and it can be more impactful. So wherever possible, I think if we can make a digital experience so socially meaningful and invite connection and have whatever way, shape or form, and there's a whole range of different ways to achieve that. But when we can create that social moment, it really helps audiences show up to do the things that they want to do, and to have a better experience, and for that to be more impactful, and for them to take more away from it, often because there's things that they're discussing And we know that discussing and reflecting on a work that they've experienced means that they're more likely to remember it. And, it's something that it's going to stick in their minds long term. So in terms of social viewing, what we see is among those who recently went online to have a digital arts experience, 28% said that they accessed it from home with other members of their household. So they're doing things like sitting on the couch together and tuning into something on their smart TV, or showing someone something on their phone, for instance. Then across the screen, we've got some other forms of social viewing. So for instance, watching a live stream, with people at an event, or they're tuning in as part of an event with their family, friends, or colleagues, or they're connecting online with family, friends who are tuning in from elsewhere. So that's an example of what my mum and I did on Sunday, is made an agreement that we would both go online to see the same digital tour at the same. So that's things like watch parties and stuff like that. So this is definitely a trend to watch. And the more we can encourage audiences to do this, so even in our marketing, for instance, saying, who are you going to come do this with, or that will help people follow through on seeing, not just seeing something going, oh, I'm going to do that, but actually making the social commitment to someone they know that they're going to do it together. And then they're more likely to get something really important out of the experience as well. So whether it's online or face-to-face, I'll just mention some of the themes that audiences are really interested in right now. I've mentioned these before, but I think as we move through, particularly in our lockdown affected states, into this next little stage, these are some of the things that are really resonating with audiences. So placemaking, reanimating public places and community spaces, bringing people together, especially after isolation, letting us forget our problems and inhabit other worlds, processing the pandemic and grieving for what has been lost, helping us grow and progress as a society, and rethinking the way arts and culture itself works. So my kind of, I think what I'm kind of thinking about in relation to all of this data is how digital arts experience can really help fulfill a community need right now. And I'll just show this one last quote to finish up, and Anne, I'd love to hear from you. And then I've got some kind of takeaways to share from my side. But this quote is, I was able to share the digital ballet season with my elderly mother. I usually take her once a year to a live ballet performance, but we watched it a few online together with my 20-year-old daughter as well. It was a really nice experience. So it's that sense of connection, I think, that I'm really thinking about at the moment. I'll just mention some of the further resources. As I said, we've got some new data coming out next week, or even this Friday, which is going to be really interesting. We've taken a bit of a pulse check on how people are feeling about kind of the opening up scenario and their latest feedback on different safety measures, including requiring proof of vaccination on entry. So stay tuned for that. And then I'll share my kind of summary facts and what I think comes out of this. And Anne, I'd love to hear yours as well. So number one, audiences value arts and culture in their lives and dearly miss it in lockdown. If we take New South Wales Metro as a kind of a bit of an indicator of how people are feeling in a kind of post-Delta world, about 50% are ready to attend live events, while 45% will be cautious while the virus is circulating. Most audiences are being more selective about digital, and 2/3 are likely to participate less online after lockdown. However, 1 in 10 are already calling themselves digital devotees and see a substantial role for digital after lockdown. And we think of ourselves at the beginning of a kind of product development cycle with a lot of innovation yet to happen. I can only see this number increasing, really. Some audiences continue to pay, more than 1/3. And those are paying slightly more. So I think there's some exciting signs there of a market that is deepening. And both online and face-to-face audiences are more attracted to connective, uplifting and immersive experiences right now. So the opportunities, I think, that exist are playing a long game with digital work and slowly, steadily normalizing attendance. So talking about it in your digital marketing, showing it, giving people hints on how to make it even better for them. Obviously, target offers for different audience segments is kind of a bit of a mantra for us. One size certainly doesn't fit all for digital, and we'll certainly be missing a trick if we're marketing digital offers to our whole database in the same way. Our digital devotees won't be getting all of the things they're interested in, and our tired of tech will be getting tired of us. exploring what deeper engagement looks like for a smaller audience. So I think whilst we should be realistic about the volume of people that are attending, I think there are some really exciting lines of thinking in terms of what would a really deep experience look like for 10 people in our audience who are digital devotees, or 2. Not all of our experiences have to be for mass audiences. And I think one of the things a recent client mentioned to us is they launched a reading group for 10 people and it sold out really well. So some of those smaller opportunities might be interesting to think about as well. Obviously, prioritizing uplifting events that enable social connection. People do still want to have those transformational themes and challenging topics, but I think putting them in a context of connection and inspiration is really important. Digital marketing is only becoming more and more important, obviously. And in lockdown, we can emphasize things like well-being and showing support or doing something different outside of lockdown, and encouraging social viewing. And then, just as we all need to be doing, is building capacity for managing uncertainty and looking after ourselves and our team. So I think whilst we've got some certain things to be hopeful for, particularly in the lockdown affected states, it's likely that we're going to face an uncertain environment all throughout 2022. Very much still a pandemic raging out there. And I think taking time to look at how we can support ourselves and our teams in this environment, and continue to innovate and sustain the connection with our audiences. I think it's a kind of a long-term thing that we can't be doing too much in. And what are your thoughts? Do you have any takeaways to share or any reflections?
Yeah, look, I think that long-term piece that you just talked about is really important because, I guess we've been doing this now for a total of 18 months or something, and it feels like a lifetime. But even in that period of time, our expectation of what we're doing and how we're doing it and what audiences will reach has really matured and evolved. And in thinking about that longer-term proposition, I think it is that thing about having a range of different offerings for different audiences, and knowing that some audiences are never going to pick up the other, but some will. And I think the other opportunity for me about digital, thinking about Sydney Dance Company, is it might only be 1 in 10 that are, devotees, but that supportive but selective is a really big market. And so there is actually an opportunity to build a whole new market, as well as find that kind of crossover market with your existing. So I think the key takeaway for me is about being really clear about what you're trying to achieve by digital. Like, what is the actual goal? Is it about profitability, and is it about making money? Because that sets a very different framework for how you approach what your offer is. Or is it about audience growth and reach? Or is it about kind of audience connectivity? And each of those things, and it may be that different business segments have different goals attached to the digital delivery strategy for them. So for Sydney Dance Company, one of those areas, we're going, well, that must be profitable. So our classes are a commercial offering, and they must be profitable, in a fairly short-term horizon. And we need to see the business plan for that very clearly. Potentially with performance, it's actually about growing reach and actually making sure that we continue to stay connected to audiences when we know we're going to be off stage for large chunks of time between performance opportunities. So I think, being really clear about what you're doing and why you're doing it will actually help really drive your strategies as to which is most appropriate form of tech delivery going forward as well.
Oh, so much wisdom there. Absolutely. There's one question here. Is there any data on which digital platform audiences prefer to access digital programs, e.g. Facebook Live, YouTube, own website, Zoom, etc.? So I think a couple of things to think about here. I don't think there's one clear answer for that, and it's worth experimenting on different platforms. But I think about who your audience is and their age group and what platforms they use generally. And testing them. So one of the things we talked about is that friction, or people dropping out when they have to switch between platforms. And I know sometimes with Facebook Lives, it's like, where is the link? Where do I go? So I think it's like testing, and whichever platform you choose, I think whenever you're promoting it, have very clear instructions on and really literally spell it out, going, you need to register here on the day. This is what you do. This is what you should expect. If you can't find a link, this is what you call. So just really spelling it out for people so that they can get on board. And if you can have that tech person there to help field any people who are having troubles, that would be good. I think it's also interesting to think about, do you want people to be watching on their phone? or their desktop computer or their TV, because for instance, people, if it's on Facebook Live, it's more likely that people will be tuning in on their phone, for instance, or you'll need to make sure the experience is suitable to be watched on a phone. Whereas other methods might be more suitable if you want to prompt people to, you know, airplay this to your smart TV, or watch this through the YouTube app, or, you know, settle in after dinner to watch a long form thing. So I think it's just thinking about that context in which audiences may be experiencing something or tuning in, and what tips or hints can you provide to help audiences have the best possible experience of whatever you're doing. I hope that's helpful. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Anne, before we finish up.
Look, I think that thing about mode of consumption, are people watching it on their phone or their tablet, or are they, you know, airplaying it to a TV, is really important and really helps to drive the experience. I think particularly if you're going to focus on that kind of social engagement where you're trying to get a participatory thing, giving people instructions as to how to Chromecast or AirPlay or put it onto a TV is really helpful, because, and whilst for most people they've kind of maybe crossed that bridge now, a little while ago that was pretty new to a lot of people, but I think it's still helpful to have an FAQ section about, if you're doing this, do this, if you want to do this, and really give suggestions. We suggest you do watch this, try and watch it on TV, it'll be a better experience for you. But I think it's also helpful to think about how you want people to engage in terms of how you're creating the content. So we're in the middle of creating a film project at the moment, which will be a kind of digital offering, and it's made for that digital. It's not a, you know, recording of a live performance, but in thinking about the sound, we're going, we want people to watch this on a TV. So do we do it with the capacity for surround sound so that people can use a home theatre system? So as we're filming and as we're actually doing the production planning for it, we're starting to think more about that, you know, the consumption mode as well, because that helps to drive some production decisions.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So much wisdom. Thank you so much, Anne, for all of the sharing of your approach at Sydney Dance Company. We'll look forward to tuning into some classes and following what you figure out as you go along.
Yes, and by come on down for a hybrid class launching on the 18th.
Awesome. And Bianca's popped a link in the chat for you if you there's anything more you want to know about. There's a fact sheet with a little bit more data, and in the next couple of weeks we'll have some fresh insights for you about the the post-lockdown market and readiness to attend in all around the country. So stay tuned for that one.
Thank you so much from the Australia Council. Thank you to Tandi and Anne. So much rich information there, and thanks for everyone for attending during this short and undoubtedly very busy week. The webinar recording will be up on the Australia Council website, hopefully within the week. And we have one more webinar coming up in this series of the Outlook Monitor, and that will be on the 26th of October, and it'll be on regional audiences and engaging audiences around Australia. So the registration link should be in the chat for that one right now. So again, thanks for joining us. Hope you have a great week wherever you are, and see you again in a few weeks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, bye.